Hello again. We are doing another episode of Ghost Talks Live, streaming to you live on Facebook and our YouTube channel. Tonight, I have another special guest, Wes Coleman from C.O.P.S, which stands for Correctional Officers Paranormal Society. I know Wes has been around for quite a long time in the paranormal field. I know he's been with quite a few other teams, and I know he has a tremendous amount of experience. So I introduce to you Wes Coleman.
Good
Hey,
evening,
Wes.
everybody. How are
Hey,
you?
how's it
Thanks
going?
for having me, Dan.
Good, perfect. Thanks for being here, Wes. So I'm gonna do the usual, like the typical questions. So, what's your background? Like, how first, like type of job you're into, and how many years have you have you been investigating?
Well, we didn't start until late. Like as far as my team goes, we didn't start until 2012. But I've been kind of dabbling in it here and there. Always been interested in it from a very young age. Never really had any experiences until I got to be a teenager. But I read this book and I still have it here. It's called Some Canadian Ghosts.
Some Canadian
And
ghost.
I read
Interesting.
this in grade three. I got it from the Scholastic program at school. I don't know if you remember those, where you could order books and that sort of thing. And
Well, today now it's everything's everything's digital now. It's like books are almost obsolete, right? Everything's on the internet, right?
oh, it's crazy. And there's
I
nothing
know.
like a book, like a hard book. I don't know.
Yeah,
That's what I
yeah,
always say anyway.
yeah. So that's
But
that's how you started, was with that, right?
yeah, like just got my imagination going, and was always kind of interested in it. Now I might be outdating myself, but I used to watch shows like That's Incredible, which was like the early 1980s, and they would show these incredible stories about ghostly hauntings and spontaneous combustion and that sort of thing, and that just kind of developed my imagination even further. And then it wasn't until I was 16 that I actually had my first paranormal experience, which was I was playing road hockey with a friend of mine out in front of his house, and I was looking up in one of the windows. I just kind of casually looked up, and there was this face staring back down at me. And the only way I can kind of really describe the face is it looked a lot like the Canadian Tire guy. Now, I'm sure there might be some American viewers who have no idea what I'm talking about,
The
but his
Canadian
name's
Tire
kind of,
guy?
yeah,
I've
the
actually
guy
never heard of that.
on the money, the guy on the Canadian Tire money,
Oh,
it's like an
yeah,
old
yeah, yeah,
guy,
okay. Okay, okay, I know
Scotty,
what you mean.
they call
On
him
on the,
Scotty.
the fake Canadian Tire bills.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
exactly.
that fake money, yeah, okay.
Yeah. So anyway, kind of look like that. That's why how I describe him. And I told my buddy, I said, like, you got an old guy like up in the window up there, and he's like, no, there's nobody home. My parents are still at work. And I said, well, come over here. And as he came over, of course, the old saying, right? The old adage where you go to show somebody what's up in the window and it's gone, right? So it was
Yeah.
gone. But I know it was very real to me. And so I just kind of put that in the back part of my head and thought, that was really cool. I'd like to experience a little more of that. But I didn't really have my next experience till I was in my 30s, and I was staying at the Elora Mill, which is down near Guelph, and was staying up on the top floor there, and had some interesting activity with kids running around that weren't actually there at around 1 o'clock in the morning. You could hear like pipes being turned on, and they were giggling and that sort of thing. And
So
there
so
was
you
actually
wouldn't
nothing there.
so you wouldn't see any kids walking around at one o'clock in the morning?
Yeah, exactly. I didn't see any kids. We just heard them. So I was with my wife at the time, and it was pretty incredible. I phoned down at the front desk and I said, listen, like, these kids are driving me crazy. We can't get any sleep. Can you do something about it? And then there was just like a silence on the end of the line, and they said, well, this is it's adults only. Like, there shouldn't be any kids here at all. And
That's
I was like, well, I know what I heard. And then the next day I followed up on it with the manager, and she didn't really want to talk much about it because she didn't want the negative publicity. But
yeah.
I finally got it out of her that, yeah, there apparently a ghost of a little boy and a little girl that haunt the place. So
Oh, we have a comment from Dave. I think you know Dave. That
absolutely
looks
great guy.
looks a little like you, Wes Coleman. Is he talking maybe about your logo in the background, I guess?
No, I think he's talking about you and I. We kind of look a bit alike, I think, but you're a lot
Yeah,
better
I
looking
think that.
than me.
Oh, thank you, Wes. You wait. I dye my hair, my beard. That's probably the only reason. Anyways, that
Yeah.
was a
So,
comment by Dave. So thanks for joining us, Dave. So
well,
keep going, Wes.
I was just going to actually bring him up, and then it wasn't until I got to be working for a few years as a correctional officer that myself and Terry Boyd, which was my partner at the time within the paranormal, we decided to go to one of the locations you know all about, the old Ottawa jail,
Oh my God,
and
yeah, yeah.
we had some interesting activity that night. It was just it. We went with another woman. Her name was Lori Gallant, and we investigated that night with another group. There was probably about 10 in the other group, and they
Hmm.
all came in with the Ghostbuster shirts on, and they were all excited. And I don't think they knew what they were in for, because by 1 o'clock in the morning they were gone. They were just
Oh
like,
yeah.
we can't deal with this anymore. And we were
So
picking up so many EVPs and feelings. It was crazy.
so it got a little real kind of thing, so to speak. So too
Absolutely.
much that they just didn't want to stick around.
Well, I'm sure you know how real that place is, right?
Oh, trust me, we've done it about 4 times, and, we've captured a lot of pretty cool, evidence. Am I gonna call it evidence? Let's say odd stuff, unexplained stuff, especially the window opening by itself. And, funny you mentioned Laurie Gallant, because she actually, had, bought tickets for we had a draw. So we had 2 people that were actually gonna come on the investigation with us. So we held a draw. That's the way we raise funds, because I think we all know that most investigative teams, we don't charge people for investigations. We raise funds in other ways. And funny thing is, you mentioned Laurie Gallant. She was actually there when we investigated the Ottawa jail hostel. So kind of
Oh,
weird that you
nice.
know the same. Yeah, you know the
Yeah.
same person.
Very nice woman.
Yeah, yeah, she's very nice. Yeah, she's still on my Facebook, by the way. Yeah. Okay. So next question here. So tell me a little bit more about cops. How you said yourself and Terry established cops. How did you get going? How did you? What are your investigative methods? What are your principles?
Okay, so we first started actually at that, the Ottawa jail. We were so and this is going back, so we're kind of new to the game, and we're not sure what equipment to use, and all our stuff is pretty laughable these days what we were using, but we still had those encounters. And it was so much, we were so much into it. We thought, what a great idea. We were both on the emergency response team at work, which was like the riot team. I've since retired from it, but we thought, well, we'd go in front of the guys, which takes a lot of courage when you're going in front of an emergency response team, and ask them if they're interested in forming a ghost team. But we did
Yeah.
that, and we had a couple guys step forward, Darren and Chris, and they were very much into it as well. Darren is our great tech guy, and Chris does all the history behind locations when we go to investigate them. And it just kind of bloomed from there. And we started using a variety of different methods. Now, I'm going to make a big shout out to Dave Gibb here, because he is our mentor. He was the guy that got us right into learning all the different methods to use, because we were kind of new to the game, but we didn't want to make us look like we were like a bunch of dummies. So
Yeah.
we researched it, and Dave, I contacted him by email, and we met at a Tim Hortons with his wife, Sandy, and it was kind of all history from there.
Hmm.
Incredible guy, incredible knowledge in the field. I'm sure you know him very well.
Yes, I do.
And
Yeah.
he got us going. And so we started officially doing investigations, and helping people out through his guidance. And started going to different locations with their team, like bigger locations, like old prisons. Like we went down to West Virginia to Moundsville and Ohio State Reformatory. And it's just been an incredible ride. And Chaps has been so good to us. We can't really say enough about them. And
Yeah.
so we started using, like, we wanted to approach it like Dave does, like the scientific method, and use as
Yeah.
much science as possible, use as much gear as possible.
Yeah.
But soon found out that there was a lot more to it than just the equipment, because I was getting information in my head when we were going to locations, feelings, but also the occasional words, names, that sort of thing, which I kind of kept to myself because I was worried that people would think I was, a little bit on the crazy side. So I kind of kept it to myself until after, like, post investigations, when we were talking to the client or talking to the owner of a facility, that oh yeah, those names are real, that was a person.
Hmm.
I'd get nicknames of people, like nicknames where it wouldn't be on Google or anything like that, so I wasn't, I couldn't be kind of chosen as being fake or anything like that, so it was very abstract things. But for the longest time I just kind of just left it aside because I didn't want to have that attention on me, that negative stigma.
Yeah.
So anyway, it wasn't until I started working with the paranormal author Richard Estep, who is based out of the States. I investigated on a number of investigations with him with some of his books. And it wasn't until I started doing these locations that he's like encouraging me, okay, like, you need to start, letting me know what you think, letting me know like what your feelings are, and not kind of hold back.
Yeah.
And then we started using a method called the Estes method. And I don't know, are
Oh,
you familiar with the Estes method?
that's
Um,
with using the spirit box with the headphones?
that's right. And being
Exactly. Yeah.
blindfolded, and I was getting information like I was just a channel. Like
Hmm.
it was incredible. I mean, and probably the most incredible experience I had was, actually, I was at this house. I'm not going to name names of people or anything like that because it was a very personal experience. But I actually felt like I was being violated and raped while I was under the like in the ghost box in the Estes method. And it was the most incredible, worst, like, terrible feeling I've ever had. And then I saw the face of this woman,
Yeah.
which turned out to be the owner of the place. And I went over to her, like, she was in the room with us when we were doing the investigation, and I said, basically, were you raped and violated? And she started crying. I started crying. And it was something that she said, I really don't want anybody to know about.
Hmm.
And I, apologized, just because, I don't have any control over it, really. So
Hmm.
that was kind of the most significant thing that happened to me, that really kind of, just kind of, um, made me feel the way I felt in other investigations as well.
Yeah. So, okay, so we were talking about now you were part of Chaps for a while, and Dave Gibb, kind of guided you. And like I said, yes, I know Dave Gibb. I actually interviewed him on this show a while back. Yeah, he's outspoken. He says he calls it as it is. He's straightforward, and I like that about him. He's just straightforward, calls it as it is, and he doesn't care if somebody doesn't like his opinion. He just calls it, and that's it. And I admire that from him. And but like you said, when you were part of Chaps, he was very, and we kind of like,
I was never a part of Chaps.
oh, no, so it was just, oh, I thought you were, so you were just, you Dave was like,
No,
he showed you the ropes and how to actually
yeah, I went to
investigate.
him. I
Oh, okay, I
emailed
thought you were
him, and
part of
we
Chaps.
we we met.
Yeah.
Although he's wanted me to be with Chaps for a long time, but I say no. You
Okay.
got to become part of Cops. But just kind of an ongoing
he's
joke.
he's still on, Wes. There's another comment. It was an honor to be part of what you have done, and we've shredded 80% of our equipment. Still pragmatic, but much less equipment. Okay, so yeah, yeah, he's a great guy. Oh, actually,
Yeah.
sorry, I actually thought you were part of Chaps at one point, but he
No.
was just like a mentor for you.
Well, we were, whenever we do investigations together, we call ourselves Chops,
Chop,
CHOPS, kind of,
chops. Okay, so it's a combination
so
of both, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So Dave is, and same thing with my team. We're very, and we don't like to use a lot of the scientific method is because it's all pseudoscience, right? So it's more maybe a scientific approach, we could say, is what we use, not a method, but an approach,
Hmm.
to be critical, to be skeptical,
Hmm.
and that's what we use. I think Dave is like that. I think you're like that. I'm like that as well with my team. But main subject tonight is, should we, as investigators, follow our gut instinct and intuition, which you already got into with your experiences. So let's talk a little bit more about that. Should we follow our guts, our intuition and investigation? Should we follow that, or should we just stick with that quote unquote scientific approach?
Well, like nothing's proven 100%. I mean, we use the scientific approach, but really it's a pseudoscience, right? So
Yeah.
there's no right or wrong way. There are better ways, and there are there are worse ways, right? But I think a little bit of both is healthy. I think that, and that's what I learned. Like as I said, when I started, it was all about the evidence, the empirical evidence, and I soon realized there was a lot more to it than that. And trust me, I am a person that is critical on things.
Hmm.
And when I started, getting this information, these feelings and these words, and like I was so much denying it because I'm thinking this is crazy.
Yeah.
And I think, I think everybody has that ability. Like I don't think I'm special by any sense of the imagination. I think everybody has the ability. They just have to learn a little bit more about how to access that in their minds. And I mean, if I can be that kind of channel, I think anybody could.
Yeah. Well, I think they say we all have what they call it, the third eye, I guess. They call it the pineal gland, which is inside our center of our brain or something like that. They say through the years, if we don't use that gland, it calcifies, and then you don't really see it. You don't feel stuff. Your intuition goes out the window, which I think there's a theory out there that kids see stuff because they're not preconditioned to say or to believe that, okay, well, that's just your imagination, forget about it, that doesn't exist, and blah blah blah, and eventually that just calcifies and you lose that intuition. But I've heard that that intuition can come back.
That's right. And
And
I
it's
100% believe you in that. Like kids and animals too, same thing,
yeah.
it's incredible, really. And yes, and I keep telling people that. Like that's one of the things I always tell people is that don't dismiss things you hear, or don't dismiss things that you see that you think, oh, it must have been a trick of the light, or it must have been the house settling or something like that. Because automatically, once you get conditioned for those things and you start having that same reaction, I'm dismissing it, then you start subconsciously dismissing it, and then
Yeah.
you don't get that information that you're trying to seek.
Yeah. But you know what I realized, and this is something that I don't share with people, but I'm kind of like you. I can go on an investigation. I get a hunch and I'll follow it, and then we'll capture an audio or something like that, or we'll capture some kind of shadow or something. We'll capture something. And I've learned now that I've been, and I think you would agree with me, Wes, we don't consider ourselves psychics, mediums. We just follow our gut feeling. And sometimes it ends up being accurate. And I hate, like we talked earlier, that stigma about in the paranormal field about, the mediums, the psychics, the this, the that. There's no validation behind it. But you can't deny that if you get a hunch, you have intuition, you follow it. Let's say if you think, okay, I should go in this room, and then suddenly you go to that room and you actually capture something, you can't deny that. That's if you validate it, you can't deny it.
And that's what keeps coming. It makes you keep coming back, right? You're like, wow, that's so incredible. I really believe in it. Like I really believe that we have that ability to something gives us that little push to go in that direction, and I
Yeah.
believe in it 100%. And you know what, like as I said before, like if a guy like me can open up about my experiences and my sensitivities, then anybody can. And I don't think anybody should be ashamed of it. You should just be yourself, step forward, and I mean, at the end of the day, who really cares what other people think, right? Just be true to yourself, and
Yep.
just share your experiences.
I think that's a very good point, Wes. Be true to yourself. I mean, I think it's because there's so many teams out there. There's good teams. There's tons of them, and I think it's almost like the field right now is so inundated with so many teams that there's so many different ways of investigating. Now, who are we to decide what's the best way to do one thing and best way to do another thing? We don't really know because, as we talked earlier, it's just pseudoscience. We just don't know. Even the equipment we use, we just don't know. Is it really? Can you really capture the paranormal with the stuff we use? And a lot of the equipment we use is, made in China. Most of the stuff we have is made in China. And I'm not saying that Chinese made products are not good, but I mean they're cheap components. Unless you have some kind of $3,000 Geiger counter or something like that that's worth that's got all the technology behind it. It's still pseudoscience.
Well, it's
But there's
mass
so many.
produced too, right? In China, it's
Exactly.
just
Yeah, exactly. And I think again, it's there's no right way or wrong way of investigating. But I think, and this is something I talked about with Larry, a friend of mine out of Florida. He's part of the Florida Bureau of Paranormal Investigations, and he mentioned that all the ways that we investigate as paranormal investigators, or the different teams investigate, it's not right or wrong, but what he mentioned is maybe if we can get together and say, okay, let's say this is the baseline of what we should kind of do at an investigation, like this is what a baseline, and then everything else is extra,
absolutely.
you know So, okay, so let's get back to. So, I have some comments here. There was some Dave, and I have Heath here. Says he apologizes because he's late, but Heath is always on the shows. We have Linda Pete here, Christine Watson. Sorry, I'm late. Selena Miller, which is one of our biggest fans. Carter Miller is on. I don't know why he says hi, mom. Okay. um,
Thanks for joining us, everybody. I really appreciate it.
yes, and then we have Dave that says made for immediate satisfaction. Satisfaction, most toys.
Yeah, absolutely.
More or less, more or less, more or less. Okay, so let's get back to the main topic here about our following our intuition. So you mentioned earlier how the first time you discovered you had that intuitive side to yourself. Can you, because a couple more people just came on, can you kind of go back over that subject of how you discovered that you were intuitive to certain things?
Well, I just started getting information that was non-scientific in nature through thought patterns. And again, like at the beginning, when I first started doing official investigations, I was very leery about sharing that information with people because of the stigma that's attached. And at the beginning, everybody's so green at the beginning, and you go into it with certain ideas and beliefs. And when I first started, I was, along with the other guys too, for the most part, we were a little skeptical about, mediums and people that are empathic.
Yeah.
And so I was a little bit leery about sharing the information I was receiving, sharing the feelings I was getting, like going into certain rooms and, feeling like, there's a great tragedy that happened in this room, but then also going into rooms and feeling like, there's a lot of love in this room and there's a lot of happiness here. I mean, as paranormal investigators, a lot of teams concentrate too much on the negative. I mean, and a lot of that's to
Hmm.
do with the TV shows too, right? Because that's
Yeah.
what sells.
Well, there's so many of them out
Um,
there right now.
but yeah, but I think there's a lot more to it. I mean, I think I've had probably more positive experiences than I've had negative experiences,
Hmm.
and it's something that as an empath, which is what I consider myself, I get those feelings, and now it's probably only been in the last 5 or 6 years that I've started to come forth with the information I've received, and it's not always right, but a lot of the time it is, and when it's bang on, it's bang on. Like it's
Hmm.
like even I shake my head and I'm like,
Yeah.
this is so awesome, and I'm so happy I've developed this. I shouldn't say developed it, but just I've been able to come to terms with what's been going on, inside my head and that sort of thing. Gee, I sound like I need a psychologist, but uh,
We
you know,
investigate the paranormal, West. We all need psychologists.
that is true.
So that this is what would have convince you to pursue that side of yourself? Is these experiences you've had and there's been validation behind it? So now you said, well, okay, so there's validation, so I should pursue that side of myself.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So experiences, if you had, let's say, if we go with intuition and following your gut feeling, what certain experiences actually, which one actually most convince you that you should follow this intuition you have?
Well, definitely the one, I just said about feeling the feeling of a woman being raped and sexually assaulted. That certainly, I had no idea that happened in that room, or I had no information whatsoever, and it was kept kind of hidden, and because she didn't want that. The she didn't want that out in public, and she never got a hold of the police or anything like that, and she was in a deep amount of shock when I felt that. So
Hmm.
even though I was very excited with the information that I received, I was also gutted too, because of the
Hmm.
experience that this woman had to face. I mean, it was horrible.
Yeah. Yeah. Actually, we have a question for you here, Wes, from Linda Kitty. No, I apologize, Linda, if I don't pronounce your family name properly. So can you see that on the screen, Wes?
Yep, yep.
Yeah.
Where now? Wes, do you know what the information you're getting is accurate, and how do you know? Do you get a particular feeling that you can describe? Well, I never know that it's accurate. I mean, afterwards I do. And the feeling is, I mean, it varies, and it depends on what kind of an atmosphere it is. I took a bunch of people on an investigation, a public investigation a few years ago. We manage a facility called the Picton Heights,
Hmm.
which is near Picton, Ontario, and it's an old military base slash asylum at one time. And I was taking a group of people through there, and I got into a certain area, and I just started feeling nauseous, like extremely
Hmm.
nauseous. And I was just kind of working through it. I'm talking to them and giving them information about the area, and then I'm like, I've got to leave the room for a second, guys. Just play on your own, so to speak.
Yeah.
And I left the room, and I just like I literally hurled, like it was that bad. It was that intense. And I don't know if that, and I don't necessarily think it was maybe negative, but it was very intense. Like the feelings in that area are very intense, which causes the nauseousness.
Yeah.
Um, Another place I was at Aleister Crowley's cottage in Cornwall, England. And
Wow.
if anybody knows who Aleister Crowley is,
Oh, I know who he is.
incredible. And yeah, incredible
Yeah.
pastor he had.
Yeah.
And it was his cottage, and we were I was with Richard Estep, and he got access to this facility that a lot of people couldn't get access to, and this cottage. And there was a ladder that went up to the attic, and every time I went up that ladder, I got like extremely nauseous, to the point
Mm.
where I couldn't even reach the top of the ladder, and I had to come back down. And I was so ill. And we went off. It's in the moors, which is like country land kind of thing. And then we took a walk out. They had lunch. I didn't have lunch because I gave mine up. But then we came back, like after about 45 minutes or an hour or so, and I started going up the ladder again. The same thing, same feeling, and I was like, "Yeah, there's something not right." And the others tried it; they never had any issues at all.
Hmm.
We were with another lady who was a medium, and she felt like that there was a vortex in the room that kept on going around and around and around, and she thought maybe that's why I was ill, but she thought things were
Because
coming
it's
through here because,
spinning you around type thing, right?
yeah, the story
Yeah.
goes is that Aleister Crowley summoned the devil, and
Yeah.
apparently it was through this process that he had. And it was an interesting experience, though, one I'll never forget.
Yeah, he was quite a character, Lister Crowley. I mean, myself, and I think Most people know that I'm pagan. That's my belief system, and I think it's along the same lines as Aleister Crowley. Of course, there's so many different kind of pathways you can take, and I know that, and I think for me as well, like you, Wes, is like I think we're alike in a way because I was very skeptic for a long time until I started seeing certain things, following certain intuitions, and then these intuitions ended up being validating with actual audio and actual evidence. So, if your advice would be to, let's say, new investigators coming up, should we or should we not follow these instincts? If we have them, should we follow them?
Well, 100%. When you're doing an investigation, don't dismiss anything. If you feel like, oh, like there's a room down at the end of the hall I want to explore, or you feel that something's going on in a certain area, or by all means, like, I mean, there's no right or wrong. And if you feel, I mean, you'll know. And I know there's a lot of people out there that are watching that have dismissed those feelings.
Hmm.
But you go for it, and
Yeah.
you figure out what's going on, because quite possibly are getting a message.
Yeah. So if we don't follow these feelings that we have, could we safely say that we may miss out on potential evidence if we don't follow these? I mean, if we follow it and we don't get nothing, well, we've lost nothing, right? But if we follow it and we actually capture evidence, then that's a good thing.
Absolutely. And what do you have to lose? I mean, you're there to have
Absolutely nothing.
I mean, primarily you're there to have fun. I mean, this is our hobby. This is what we like to do. And I always tell people, like, if you're not having fun anymore, then don't do it, because
No, no.
that's what we do. Like, I'm a correctional officer. I've been a correctional officer for almost 28 years. This is my fun, and this is what I
Yeah,
enjoy. When it becomes no longer fun, then I'm not interested anymore. I'll move on to something else. But
yeah.
it's something I really enjoy, and I'm learning more and more about myself. And I'm always learning. I don't profess to be a professional by any means. I'm still learning everything I can, soaking in everything, different people's opinions.
Yeah.
Even though mine might be different, I still respect, another person's opinion, as long as it's
Hmm.
within reason.
Yeah. I think
But
that's a good point. Very good point, Wes. And I think for me is one of the reasons why I started doing these shows is to get different perspectives from different teams, different investigators, and find out like how they do stuff. And and I think by doing this is we learn more, right? By getting other people's opinions and how they investigate.
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Okay. So now this is a controversial thing. Okay. Psychics, mediums, are they the same? Like, do we like when you have intuition, and I hate like that stigma as well. When you get that intuition and that gut feeling, you don't consider yourself a psychic or medium.
Not at all. Not because of the stigma attached to it. I mean, we've had a couple of mediums work for us over the years, and they've been fabulous. They've gotten some amazing information that even, I shake my head, because, as I said at the beginning, we weren't into that. We were like, we're not into the hocus pocus kind of stuff. But
Yeah.
then we thought we needed to expand our horizons a little bit, and it really paid off. And it's interesting. Again, like, when you come into this field as a paranormal investigator, you have to keep that open mind. If you go
Hmm.
in closed minded and there's only one way or the highway, then you're not going to be able to learn, like, all the different stuff that's going on, and you could miss things.
Yeah.
um,
Yeah. I guess, yeah, if you go in closed minded, then you're closing so many doors on yourself that you're missing out on potential evidence that you could actually capture.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. So you just have to keep an open mind and respect other people, and the way they do things. Like, I don't
Hmm.
necessarily agree with the way people do things, like some people do things, but
Yeah.
that's the way they're doing it. If I think that, the evidence that they get is a little bit suspect, well, then that's what I
Hmm.
believe. That's my belief.
Yeah.
But it's so impossible to go into, the public and try to, and this is why I don't post a lot of stuff online, because people just rip you apart. And I don't really care. I mean, I really don't care what other people think,
Yeah.
because I'm into it for myself. I'm into proving and learning and experiencing things myself. And if people want to believe it, well, great. But if they don't, that's fine too.
Yeah.
That's totally up to them. But I'm not in it to try to please somebody or try to prove something to somebody, because that's just not what I'm in it for.
So you just want to get validation for yourself, and I think myself as well is the same thing. I just want to get validation for myself. I'm like this kooky, obsessed person about life after death. Like, what happens when we die? And I will try everything at my disposal to find out, or at least get some kind of information on that. What does happen? You know.
Well,
Uh,
that's a good question, right? I mean, we all have our different belief systems. Some of us are Christian, some of us are from indigenous backgrounds, some of
mhm.
us are, I mean, there's the whole variety of different religions. And I think the one common thing is that we do have some kind of uh, an afterlife of some kind. And I think it all depends on your belief system. I honestly think there's definitely something going on. I think, our energy never dies. I think our energy just goes from us into the atmosphere, and it's somehow transported into possibly another person. Like, you hear about these experiences when people have past life regression in a life that they never even lived in.
Yeah.
So, have they been reincarnated, or, we really don't know the answer to that. But I definitely believe there's something on the other side. I've received messages. I can't convince people that. I mean, that's up to them. But in my mind, I have no doubt that there's an afterlife.
I think there's something now. It's kind of weird for me. I kind of believe in reincarnation. It's kind of like you're. I kind of see like, and this is something I separate from the investigating the paranormal. Is I kind of try to keep my spiritual kind of beliefs separate from investigating, so I can stay very focused. But if let's say for me, if I go to that personal belief, I believe that here the life that we live, it's like school, where you come in and you learn a lot of experiences, and then you go to some other kind of something, and you're judged by some other form of energy, and says, okay, you know what, you did well, but there's so many lessons you still need to learn, so you're going to go back, you're going to reincarnate into some kind of other, either, let's say, and this is an example I told people, let's say in your life you're an animal abuser. You've abused dogs, you're just an animal abuser. Well, in your next life, you're going to come back as a dog. So you can actually feel that, what it is to be a dog and be abused. So there's so many different types of belief system. And I think for us, I think that's what we're trying to find out, is what does happen. I mean, I think in the end, we all end up in the same place,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
So I'm going to go here. So I had a couple more questions for you here. So I'm going to go back to the psychics, mediums, and intuition. Following that, so do you think there is a place for that in the paranormal field? Following your intuition and just following your gut feeling. Is there a place for that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there is. And you know, the biggest thing, the biggest target, if you want to call it that, on psychics and mediums, or psychic mediums, is that like, a lot of them charge money for their services and that sort of thing. Now, when we do investigations, I mean, like we say, if you want to come and be a part of our team and investigate a place as a psychic medium, it's free. There's no money involved. There's nothing like that. So the problem comes is where you have some psychic mediums that may be fake, and they're making a living off of it. And those are the ones you kind of have to be particularly careful about. I mean, some of them are genuine. I'm not putting them
Hmm.
down at all by any means, but I think it's a very small percentage. And it's a great way to commit fraud, I think.
Yeah.
We've encountered some teams before that have had had ones that were charging money to do investigations,
Mm,
and we frown upon that greatly. And
yeah, I
usually
think we all
we
do.
talk. Yeah, but there, the ones that are out there, right? Like we've caught a couple, and that's the advantage of being a correctional officer too, is that we kind of focus on that, and we'll go in and we'll talk to a client about it, and we have friends that are in the police and get them involved too if there's been situations where clients have been taken advantage of, which there have been. I mean, I know clients that have spent $2,000-3,000 on teams to come in to help them out, and that's just so completely unethical. It's that should never ever be done under any circumstances.
No. And I think this is something that's frowned upon by most teams, that you just don't charge. I mean, there's so many other ways we can raise money for, either getting equipment or getting into locations. But actually charging somebody, especially, let's say, a residence where somebody is experiencing some stuff that they just don't understand, it just seems so wrong to say, okay, well, I'll help you, but you'll have to pay me $500 or $1,000 for me to help you, which it doesn't make any sense to me. And I think in the paranormal field, I think that's the general consensus is you just don't charge.
Yeah, yeah.
So we have a couple of actually we have a couple new. So we have Cheryl McKee here. I don't know if you know Cheryl from the Night Watchman.
I don't know. I've seen pictures on your Facebook page though of you doing an
Yeah.
investigation with them, but yeah.
Yeah, she's on as well. So I'm kind of cooperating with this team. We're doing different investigations. And again, we talked about different types of investigating. They have their way of doing things. And I've noticed that it's good to try to incorporate both kind of methods together and actually try to investigate a location with these with other teams, and actually see how we can incorporate our methods together and actually make like a whole, like a really good investigation. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean that's one of the I've learned so much from investigating with different teams, and some things that I find reliable and some things not so reliable, but it's really interesting to get to know everybody's perspective and how they do things.
Yeah, and I think, like I said, I think that's why I'm doing this now. Is just I just want to get people's input on how they do things, and I think that's the right way to go.
Absolutely.
And Cheryl goes, "Amen. Amen. Lack of ethics just drives me crazy." I think
Yeah,
that's pretty much all of us. And then we have Linda here. Great point, Wes. I guess you know Linda because she says earlier she said she loves your work. So do you know Linda
yeah, Linda is
Chiarino?
very dear to my heart. I just love that woman, and she's come down and seen our place like at the Heights there. And we just started talking and got in, having a lot in common. And she's with the Georgina Paranormal Society, which is north of Toronto, and another extremely respectable investigator. And she's always supported me, and I try to support her. And it's she's an awesome individual.
Yeah. So the have you ever done some of the major locations, like let's say Waverly? Because I know Dave said he's done it before, and I actually talked to Dave about doing it with him, doing the Waverly asylum, which is I think is one of the most known locations. Have you actually done that location, Waverly Sanatorium?
I have not done Waverly. I've heard like obviously a ton about it. It's been on a lot of shows, and it's something I'd like to do. But you know, I I don't really kind of go to the places, like I kind of go to the ones that are off the beaten track kind of thing, and we kind of mostly go to like old prisons or asylums. We're more into that kind of thing. Even though of course Waverly's an asylum, but we haven't gotten down there yet. I know they charge quite a bit of money to investigate there.
Yeah,
Somebody
they do.
said,
They do.
but it's definitely yeah, someplace I wouldn't mind going. I mean, bucket list for me would be Alcatraz. I'd love to get to Alcatraz. But
Oh yes, 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 Alcatraz. But you know what the other bucket list is? Kingston Pen.
okay,
I don't. Do you know? Has anybody actually done the Kingston Pen, like an actual overnight investigation? You know that? I mean,
well,
being part of your correctional officer, would you know if somebody's actually done the Kingston Pen?
well, I can't really comment on that one.
It's secrecy. Okay, all right. So we don't know. But if you had the chance, would you?
Yeah, Yep, yep, absolutely. That is definitely, obviously, the Canadian prison of all prisons, right? Everything that's happened that has been violent in nature over the course of the last 50, 60 years has
Yeah.
happened at Kingston Penitentiary, the Great Riot in the 70s. And
Yep.
absolutely, that's definitely a place that, but it's hard to get into. There's definitely a lot of red tape, a lot of government red tape. Our government's very backwards as far as they have the United Way does their tours there, which is great. It's a great way of making money for the United Way. They've developed that contract with them, but they do not want anything to do with the kind of the paranormal part of things, because they had a situation there a couple of years back where on a tour they had a psychic medium who got the spirit of a correctional officer that was killed there, and the information that she was talking and saying was very personal in nature. And one of the government officials was on the tour and said, brought up the fact that, yeah, there's no way we could ever have this, because there's they don't want that personal information given out to the public
Hmm.
or on TV or anything like that without the consent of the individuals that are still living.
Yeah.
So it is a very touchy situation, and I think the proper investigation or the proper TV show maybe that went in there. There would have to be explicit content saying that you know any personal information cannot be brought across like a public medium like TV.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
mhm.
I think I've gotten a couple of places like that where people are they just don't want that negative attention with the paranormal. And I understand with historical locations, especially asylums, maybe even jails, that they don't want that kind of that connection with the paranormal. Also with private residences as well are like that. I remember doing a private residence once that they were so scared that the neighbors would wonder what the hell we're doing there. I actually had to bring my Jeep. I had everything. I had little equipment, not too much. I have a lot more now, but I managed to fit everything in the back of my Jeep. They had me park in the garage and take the cases out there because they didn't want anybody in the neighborhood to see, what the hell we're doing there. And I think but we do know the paranormal exists, which is why we do what we do. What would you think? Like, why is it people that have that negative kind of outlook on the paranormal? Like, people will say, "Oh, people think I'm crazy because I see ghosts or I feel something's in my house." I mean, what's your take on that, Wes? Like, why would people say that? That it doesn't exist, and people that do believe in it might be crazy or something. Because I get that a lot. People think, they're afraid because they go, "Well, I'm afraid people are going to think I'm nuts."
Well, I always say, when I go out into public and people ask me, what I do, I either get the response like, "Wow, that is so cool," or I get the response like, "Are you serious?" Like,
Where's your
especially
doctor?
coming. I beg your pardon?
It's like people ask you, "Where's your doctor?"
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Same situation, right? Like, and it's like, and I think it's just that over the years, it's always been kind of a subject that people don't want to really look at or focus on, especially a lot of religious organizations. They find it. I mean, there are people that have quoted like Bible quotes to me. Now, my dad was an Anglican minister, so people can't, try to intimidate me with Bible quotes. But they went on about how you shouldn't be trying to summon, um, ghosts or people from the afterlife, because you don't know what you're getting, which is true. But are we summoning them, or are we just investigating them? Are they the ones coming forward to us and we're trying to find out answers to them?
Yeah.
It is a touchy subject, and people either think it's incredible and fun and awesome, or they think it's something that people shouldn't touch, or they should leave alone.
And I think a lot of it too is when we do investigations, there's that respect thing. And we did. There's one thing I did, and this is something I'm gonna ask you as well. I did a cemetery once, and I will never do it again. I don't know why I did it. I mean, somebody said, "Yeah, we think it's haunted." We did it. We did it respectfully, but I think that, and I is. I'd like to get your opinion on this. Is Are cemeteries something we should be doing, or is that kind of disrespectful?
Well, I've never done a cemetery personally. I don't think a spirit would wander around a cemetery myself. That's just my thought. I think they would go back to places that they love to be, or situate or places where there's some sort of intensity to how their life revolved around at one time.
Yeah,
Now, on the flip side of that, like I've been down to Gettysburg, and I've been down to the Gettysburg battlefield, and not doing an official investigation there, because again, that's definitely an ethical thing. There's just thousands upon thousands of people that died there.
yeah,
However, when you're going into a situation like for myself, going into certain areas, I can't stop from feeling a certain way when I get into a certain area. Like if somebody was died in a particular way in a certain area, like I get strong feelings about that. Or
yeah.
if a lot of people died in a certain area, like I get that nauseousness. So it's not something you can turn off necessarily. I can control it to a degree, but not like flipping a switch. Kind of like a
No,
dimmer, where you're like,
yeah, yeah.
that's kind of like what it's like.
It's kind of like me. Like when and this is something like I don't really share with people a lot. Obviously, you're very open with it, and you have, and I admire that in you, that you're actually comfortable with that side of yourself. It's not something that I advertise very much, but I'm very much like you. I follow my intuition, and stuff gets validated. And it's hard when you get into locations and you feel like maybe you're intruding, or you're, especially if there's, like historical places where families have lived there before, and you clue into stuff. There's kind of things you just don't want to make public sometimes.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know.
You've got to be really careful. You have to be very sensitive towards your environment and the client and that sort of thing as well, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. So, what's your best word of advice you could give to somebody who's actually starting the paranormal, or actually wanting to start a team? What would be your best advice you could give to somebody trying to start investigating?
Well, definitely educate yourself as far as how to approach investigations, learn the different methods. I was so lucky and fortunate to have Dave Gibb help me out on a
Hmm.
number of occasions, and I have so much respect for that guy. I just can't even begin to tell you. But just educate yourself, keep an open mind, and most of all, have fun in what you're doing. Like enjoy yourself, and respect is so huge. Respect the
Hmm.
place that you're in, respect the people that once lived there, respect that the people that that do live there, if there is somebody living there. And just, yeah, respect the environment. I guess the three R's I always say: respect, respect, respect. But
Yeah.
I think it's important, all those things.
Yeah. No, I think that's, and I think also with private residences is the same thing. I mean, now I gotta go. How many private do you do private residences often, or is it mostly the historical locations or bigger locations?
We've kind of since COVID, we were doing quite a
Mhm.
few up until COVID hit, and then unless it was a very serious case, which we had one, but it was down in southwestern Ontario. I had to get another team to do it.
Yeah.
But yeah, we just didn't feel it was safe to come into a place and unless they were really struggling with something, we just didn't feel that was a great thing.
Hmm.
And we have a whole process. If somebody has if they're being tormented, like in a physical, like in a house or their own premises or something like that, we'll definitely interview them first. Sometimes send them a questionnaire, then interview them. Just kind of get a full idea what they're all about before we actually go in and do an investigation. A lot of people don't really realize that. Like you think you just show up and do an investigation. Well, there's a lot more to it than that, because there are a lot of people out there, especially, doing the job I do. We have to be very careful of the place that we end up. We've been to residences before that there have been drugs around, and
Hmm.
that sort of thing. And you really have to be careful. And I think everybody should be careful, not just us, but everybody, before you go into a resident, make sure you know them, and, to a degree anyway, and
Yeah.
know what you're getting yourself into.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing. I mean, you got to make sure you see when we investigate a private residence. I always let my wife know, okay, I'm going to this location. This is where I'm going to be. I'll text you when I get there, because you don't know what you're getting into. You just don't know.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. So now the main subject was you're an empathic, obviously, or you consider yourself an empathic.
Yep.
Now you're when you go to a location, do you go in with that kind of attitude that you're going to actually follow more your instinct, or do you still follow that scientific approach, or do you go more towards the empathic side?
Well, it's both, really. I don't really have control over the empathic side. These feelings and things just come to me. It's not a matter of saying, like, I mean, I can turn it off like I used to do, but
Hmm.
it usually hinders an investigation. But definitely try to have the physical evidence prove the information that I may be picking up on. I mean, that's the ultimate situation where, you can verify. Obviously the scientific method, you want to try to replicate something twice as well, try
Yeah.
to make it happen again. But that information, like, being blindfolded, and not hearing anything, and getting information that way is, like, how do you get information that is really sincere when all your senses are blocked off?
Yeah.
That's one of the methods, like, I like to use on, well, all investigations basically. And it doesn't always work, but it's some locations seem to have more messages to give than others do, for whatever reason. Like, the messages are stronger. And but we, yeah, definitely follow up the physical with the empathic that's going on, the physical evidence.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's a tough field we're into. Basically, it's a tough field. I mean,
Yeah, there's no
there's
set way. I mean, there's no
no,
there's no set
there,
way.
no, there isn't. I think everything is an open field, right? It's just we have to try different things. We have to try different equipment. And for me, I think audio and video is probably the best form of evidence. Everything else is complementary to whatever you capture, like EMF meters and all that stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we're in an hour here, Wes. So, any final words of advice you could give to everybody watching right now?
Um, my biggest thing that I always tell people is, like, I see, I'm a firm believer in para unity, and I hope that everybody kind of gets along with everybody else, and there's a degree of respect there among groups. It's not always attainable. There's always some groups that, are very difficult, or choose to do things improperly.
Hmm.
But I think, through open communication and respecting each other, I think that's very important. And learning all the time, learning other people's methods. Like, your method isn't necessarily, the best of all best.
No, absolutely
It's
not. No.
and I'm sorry, I don't mean that directed at you,
No,
but
no, 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 I'm not.
just
No,
anybody.
no. But I mean, it is like my method, your method. It's not the only method. There's so many different methods, and like we agreed before, it's a pseudoscience. So we can't really judge what's the best way, what's the worst way to do certain things. We can only try a lot of stuff, and hopefully we capture evidence while we do it.
Exactly. And the biggest thing is just have fun and enjoy it. And
Mhm.
don't have other people, don't be quick to prove something. I don't, as I say, I don't post much stuff anymore, because it doesn't really matter. Like, I'm not trying to get in the Guinness Book of World Records, or
Yeah,
have be in the psychical research kind of society. I'm there to prove it to myself and
yeah.
ourselves as a team.
Yeah, no, that's a good point as well. I mean, I want to do that, but I mean, I go a little farther. I mean, I like I like to bring it out to the public, which is like I said again, this is why I started doing these shows. Bring it out to the public. Make sure you know where you're going. You know what you're getting yourself into when you start doing paranormal investigations. It's not fun and games. It's not like everything you see on TV. There's a lot of research that goes behind it. There's a lot of risks as well. And that's one last question I'm going to ask you before we actually close down here. When you enter a location, Wes, and that's going back to the following your intuition, your empathic side. If you feel something is negative, how would you leave, or would you how would you try to handle it and actually kind of protect yourself? Because I mean, people say there's a possibility of attachments, all sorts of things. You can bring negative stuff home. How would you actually protect yourself? Like, what would you do?
Well, it really depends on the intensity. I went to a place called the Monroe House in Indiana, and it was this place is like I can't even describe it. It's such a haunted place. If you ever get a chance to you want to bring your team down there and investigate it, it is the craziest house I have ever been in my life.
You'll have to send
And
me the link.
yeah, yeah, for sure. We were there for 4 nights. I was there with Richard Estep, and we slept there for 4 nights. And that's one of my things I always said I would never do is sleep at a location that I'm investigating. And but that's difficult with Richard. And this place, I think we were about 3 nights in, and we were basically sleeping on air mattresses on the floor in different rooms. And I find myself the most vulnerable when I'm sleeping because I don't have any way of controlling what's going on, and
Yeah.
this information's coming into me, and in the form of dreams, and it can be pretty intense. And about the third night in, I was like, yeah, like I don't think I can I don't think I can stay here another night. Like I'm mentally exhausted because when we investigate all night and all day. We might get about 4 hours sleep during the course of a day, but we're always investigating. So once you start getting tired, then you open yourself up to a lot of stuff too, because
Hmm.
your shield is coming down a bit.
Yeah, that's a
And
good point. Yeah, you
I
become
just
weak. You become
yeah,
weak.
exactly. And I just felt like the house was starting to take me over, and I'm like, okay, no, I can't do this. So it was. I ended up doing it, but I had somebody stay down in the room with me,
Yeah.
just in case that they could control what was going on with me, and
Hmm.
it seemed to work out okay, but
Yeah.
it was very intense, very intense.
I've had the same kind of experiences. One was the, and I mention it all the time, is the Trinity Inn in Gananoque. I had such a bad experience there, and it's at the point now I have this personal vendetta with this place. And somebody had told me it was this spirit called Eleanor, and she kind of it was like a spiritual attachment. I actually brought it home, and I think that's what made me a believer, as you said, about developing that side of yourself. When you feel something and you go, okay, there's got to be something there,
Absolutely.
you know. Okay. Okay, Wes. So we're good. I want to thank you for this. I really appreciate you coming on my show tonight. I think the information, we had tons and tons of viewers and tons of questions. Like, I didn't even get a chance to get to half of the questions that are there. I did post a couple up there, but the video will be available for everybody to see on YouTube and Facebook later on. And you know what? One day I wouldn't mind investigating with you guys. I mean, I think I think combining teams together and combining methods, I think it's a great way to go.
100%. And thanks for having me on the show. And thanks to all the listeners and viewers out there. I really appreciate it. And if there's anything I can answer, you have any questions, please look on Facebook and check me out, Wes Coleman. And
Yeah.
also, we have a Facebook page for C.O.P.S, Correctional Officers Paranormal Society. Check us out on Facebook. It has that logo that you can see in the background there on the page.
And you can't mistake that logo. It's
Yeah,
very
exactly.
specific. Yeah. I'll post your channels and Facebook page on our page in case people have any questions for you.
Great. Thank you very much. Thanks, Dan.
All right. Okay. So thanks again, Wes, for coming on tonight. I really appreciate it. I know you have a very busy schedule, you being a correctional officer, and that sometimes your schedules, you have late shifts and all that stuff. But I really appreciate you coming on the show tonight.
Thanks, Dan.
Okay, Wes. All right. You take care, and you have yourself a great weekend, Wes. And we'll talk soon.
You bet.
All right.
Bye bye.
Take care. Bye bye. All right, guys. So this was Wes Coleman from C.O.P.S, Correctional Officers Paranormal Society. Great guy. And obviously, we talked about a subject that was a little controversial about following our intuition, following our instinct when we're on investigations. I've had the same kind of battle myself with trying to separate the two about my empathic side, I guess you could say, and my gut feeling. Like Wes, I've had experiences at investigations where I followed a hunch and we actually captured evidence and actual audio, which was which actually correlated with the hunches I was having. So this is a subject I think we'll have to revisit at one point. So I'm looking forward to maybe one day actually investigating with Wes and his team. I think he's a great guy, and I think he's I admire that he's actually willing to develop and actually open this side of himself to the paranormal about being empathic and actually following his gut feeling and his intuition. I admire that. Not everybody would be willing to do that and actually make it public. Anyways, thanks again, Wes. If you're still listening, thanks again for joining us on this show. So, guys, I mean, I see a lot of questions here. I apologize if I didn't get to all your questions. I am trying to, but right now, there's just way too much for me to follow here. So I'm going to need somebody else to actually follow me on these feeds, and actually I'm going to need help from Mateo and Lawrence to actually do these feeds because I just can't keep up with the comments and the questions. So I'm going to go back to the last comments here. If I go back up to, I'm not going to go up all the way up though. I'd like to thank Dave for tuning in. I admire Dave. He's a great investigator. Dave is part of the part of CHAPS, Canadian Haunting and Paranormal Society. We have Mia, Linda, that was on as well. Thank you for joining in. Brandon as well. Thanks for joining in, Brandon. Heath, thanks for joining us again. Linda, Christine, Selena, our biggest fan. Thank you again, Selena, for tuning in. And Carter, which is Selena's son. So he was on as well. And then we had Cheryl from the Night Watchman investigative team. We just did an investigation with the Night Watchman last weekend at the a store called Toy Heaven, and we had some interesting stuff happen there. So, had to do with the doll, and you can see the actual investigation on our YouTube channel. We'll be doing a lot more stuff with Cheryl and Mark from the Night Watchman in the future. So we also had Christine, Marilyn, not Marlene, sorry, Marilyn. She was on as well, and she's been on quite a few times. So there was a question that Marilyn actually asked is, do you think ghosts, and I'll post it up here, do you think ghosts that remain here are trapped or are choosing to stay? Marilyn, I think that ghosts, I'm thinking it's more like a limbo. If you die like a traumatic kind of death and your spirit ends up somehow stuck between the living and the dying, living and like life and death. I think it's you're in limbo. So I think that's why, that's my own personal opinion on what I think spirits are, is that energy that's stuck between this realm and the realm of the dead. So that's just my own opinion, but that's just to answer your question. TikTok for some is a big fraud nowadays with mediumship tarot. So Rhiannon Miller said TikTok, for example, is it's a big for fraud nowadays with mediumship and tarot, and that's the sad thing. Rhiannon is like, and I know for a fact there's a lot of psychics and mediums out there that are legit. And unfortunately, the ones that are not legit or the fakes actually give the other ones a bad name, which is unfortunate. So Linda's a great fan of Wes. Cheryl, thanks again for joining. I'm looking forward to May 7th with you guys. Oops, May 7th. Yes, guys, there's something coming up on May 7th with Ghosts, the Night Watchman, and my buddy Larry out of Florida, who is part of the Florida Bureau of Paranormal Investigation. So there is something coming up on May 7th. I'll be posting that on our Facebook page shortly. So I'm just looking at the comments here. Sorry if I can't get to all the comments. Okay, and there's Anna Mora, which is commenting, I think, I'm not sure if it's Spanish. Unfortunately, Anna, I don't speak Spanish. If that's what you're, if that's the language you're speaking, just don't know. Anyways, exists inside, outside. Just looking at the comments here, guys. I just want to make sure that I kind of touch base with every. That the family's still alive. Love the crowd tonight. Yes, it was a good crowd tonight. So we actually had a lot of viewers. It was a good show. Great show. Thanks, Wes and Dan. Thank you. Thanks, Wes. Nice to meet you. I'm just looking at the comments. Happy Easter. Happy Easter, everybody, by the way. David Crowley. I'm really late. Sorry, David. You missed. David, you will be able to view the show on our Facebook channel and YouTube, Facebook page and our YouTube channel. They will be posted live or will be posted to those channels. Rewatch. It was a great show. Rewatch. Thanks, Selena. It was fun. Thanks, Selena, again. First time watching, I think. Okay, David. David, don't stop. I have some other shows coming up in the next couple of weeks. I will be. There was a show back then a couple of weeks ago. I was supposed to do interview Jose Longchamp, which is a psychic medium out of Cornwall. Unfortunately, we had some technical difficulties, and I could not interview Jose. She will be on Friday, April 22nd for the next episode of Ghost Talks. So this is Friday, April 22nd at 7 p.m. I will be interviewing Jose Seguin-Longchamp. Yes, Cheryl, can't wait for May 7th. There's still a lot of planning to do, Cheryl. I'm sure we'll have another meeting prior to. I will be posting the event shortly on our Facebook page, and hopefully things are going to work out. Happy Easter, David. Okay, guys, it is now 8:12. I'd like to thank everybody actually tuned in again tonight for Ghost Talks Live. My next show will be, and I was double check the date here, on April 22nd, which is Friday. I will be interviewing Jose Longchamp, who is a psychic medium out of Cornwall, Ontario. So this will be on Friday, April 22nd at 7 p.m. All right, guys. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for, just your general support and everything else. I just love it, and I appreciate you guys so much. Anyways, have a happy Easter and enjoy the rest of your weekend. Have a good night, guys. Good night, guys. Take care.